Hello, welcome to Unlocking Your DNA. In this short clip, we're going to talk about the different types of testing companies and your options. Hope you find it useful. So we'll start with Ancestry DNA because it is the biggest, with over 19 million people so far tested with that company. If you want to test with Ancestry DNA, you basically have to provide a saliva sample and you spit into a tube. The great thing is obviously there's a large database, but it doesn't accept uploads. In other words, if you want to be on the Ancestry database, you have to test with them. You can see your matches and you can use many of the tools that are on Ancestry DNA without a subscription, but to get the full use, you will need a subscription. So you have to decide whether you want the cost to be able to see every little bit of the tools available. The next biggest company is 23andMe, and at the time of recording they had over 12 million people who had tested with them. Just like Ancestry, it's a saliva sample, and just like Ancestry, they don't accept uploads. So if you want to be in their database, you have to test with them. But the great thing is you don't need a subscription. There are, however, limited tools on 23andMe, and I find it quite difficult in terms of the fact there are few trees, but it does have a chromosome browser, which Ancestry doesn't have. We're now going to move on to MyHeritage DNA. So it's a much smaller database compared to the others, with just over 4.5 million people on it. However, it does a cheek swab test, so someone has to put something inside their mouth and rub the inside of their cheeks to contain enough bits of DNA. It does mean that people who find difficulty making enough saliva for some of the other tests do find MyHeritage a good option. It's also great because you don't need a subscription if you want to do MyHeritage, though it does try and encourage you to do so. You really don't need to. And if you want to use all of the tools, it's just a small one-off fee. Usually, however, at some point in the year, sometimes by DNA Day or sometimes by another important time, like when RootsTech is on, they offer a lifetime free use of the tools. So if you upload then, you can use the tools for free if you do it there. The other thing that as I just mentioned, they do allow uploads from other companies. So if you test with someone like Ancestry or 23andMe, you can then take your raw DNA, you download it onto your computer, and you can upload it to MyHeritage. So it's a really good option and well worth considering. I find it really useful because of the tools, and I also think that a lot of people in the UK seem to find it quite popular. So our next company is Family Tree DNA. They've actually been going for quite a long time, but they have a fairly small database of 1.4 million. Again, it's a cheek swab, so some people find it an easier test to take. If you do test with them, you then haven't got to do any kind of subscription and you have their tools available to you. However, they do accept uploads from other companies such as Ancestry or 23 or MyHeritage, and in that case, for a small one-off fee, they can unlock the tools they have and be able to use them to look at your new matches there. So it could be worth having a look at Family Tree DNA. Last but not least is Living DNA. As you can see, for a fairly new company, they have about 300,000 people on their database. And again, it's a cheek swab. At the moment, they accept uploads for free, so from other companies, and there's no one-off fee to unlock any tools. There's very few tools just at the minute on Living DNA, but they are sort of getting more and more things online as time goes on. So if it's a company that you think maybe somebody might test on them and that you haven't got in any of the other companies. So it's definitely worth uploading if you feel comfortable with their T's and C's to them to see if you've got matches that they don't belong anywhere else. So we've talked about the companies where you can get your DNA tested, but I'm just having a quick talk now about the type of tests those companies offer. Now, some people might be interested in something called their mitochondrial DNA. And as you can see from my little illustration on the side, that you can see that it is something that a male or a female can take, and it follows your maternal line, because the mitochondria is from the egg part of your sperm and egg and can only be passed on by the mother. So some companies show your mitochondrial DNA haplogroup, but only Family Tree DNA give you a database where you can look at other people who may share the same kind of haplogroup as you. And that could be useful if you're trying to find your maternal line. It is quite a complicated test to do because the way that it works means that you can be connected to someone, you can have a match with somebody, and actually your common ancestor may be many generations from both of you. So you might not be able to find any kind of paper link to validate that particular match. It's also inexpensive. It's the most expensive of the tests, but Family Tree DNA do offer on holidays and things like that, they do offer sometimes sales where it might be worth looking at. So that's something you can look at if you're interested in mitochondrial DNA and finding more about sort of your deep ancestry. The other test you may have heard of is the Y-DNA test. Now, this is a test that can only be performed by men, and it follows your male paternal line. So only men can take it because they're the only ones with the Y chromosome, and it only therefore follows the male line, the father's line. This is the one that people tend to like to use if they're trying to find an illegitimate line along their parental side, along their male side. So it can be useful to find out perhaps who the father of your illegitimate great-great-grandfather was. Just like mitochondrial DNA, you can match with people only on Family Tree DNA, though other companies offer your haplogroup, but only Family Tree DNA actually offer a match list. Again, you can match with somebody and they can still be many generations away, and the database is quite small compared to something else that you might see in somewhere like Ancestry, looking at different type of DNA test, and it's quite expensive the further along that you go, but it can break down a brick wall that you may not be able to do in any other way. So it's worth considering if you've got some kind of problem in the sort of parental linear way that you might want to discover. Finally, we're going to talk about the autosomal DNA test. That's the most common one that most people have taken, and that's the one that all those companies that I talked at the start are offering you, and they're all their big databases. Anyone can take an autosomal test, and it basically is accurate for about 5 generations. So it's not far back as a mitochondrial or a Y-DNA test. However, it's helpful for finding your links to your most recent parts of your tree and maybe going further back, and this is where you're going to find your cousins. So many people find this really useful to validate their family tree that they've created so far and link with cousins and perhaps prove that the information they found is correct. So thank you for listening, and I hope you found that of some use. Remember that I'm in Family Tree magazine every month to answer questions. So if you've got a burning question you'd like to find out about, please do contact me on Family Tree magazine, and I hope we'll be able to help you. Until next time, bye.